events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone. That's right. We're live here, FPC Radio Live. And don't worry, folks. My co-host is here. I know his graphic, his photos on the screen right now, but that's because I completely forgot to put it up there. No, I assure you, it is not just me today. It is me and my co-host, John. John, let everyone out there know you're actually here, and I'm not going to be talking to myself for the next 25 minutes.
I'm here.
Good.
Here I am.
Good. Perfect. Yes, because I forgot to put your photo up on the screen. There we go. Now we're talking. Now it's not just me up here on the screen scaring everyone away with my baggy eyes and clearly exhausted look, because I think I'm on about 4 hours of sleep, John. I really don't know.
Yeah, why? Who's counting sleep? I mean, you were away for several days in America's most fun city, so
Yes.
Why would you want to sleep when you're there? Now you come back to sleepy Florida, where all the old folks go, and you can rest up.
Yes, exactly. No, I have some time to rest up and get back to, normalcy here in a minute. But no, I am happy. I've been aching to get on here and talk about something, because I have this massive ego that I have to I got to pump up, and if I don't have an outlet, I can't do that. No, I obviously anyone who obviously followed me on Twitter, and I talked about it on the show. I went out, played a World Series of Poker event. It was great. I did not win, John, unfortunately. If you couldn't put two and two together right now, I mean, I obviously, if I won, I believe you would have heard about it, and you would have heard about it.
And you wouldn't be talking to me right now.
No. I'd be on a beach somewhere sipping Mai Tais or whatever,
Right.
Like I said, it was very fun. I lasted about 5 or 6 hours, something like that, which, hey, for my first event, I was pretty happy with. Unfortunately, John, I don't know how much of a poker player you are, but I know you'll understand this. I got busted out with pocket aces. So, yeah, so it's again, there's worse ways to go out. And trust me, I saw it sitting at the table. No, like I said, it was a fun experience, and something that I certainly enjoy, because I do like playing cards, and it's always been something I found myself to be at least somewhat competent at. And if I can find something I'm somewhat competent at, I usually stick with it, because I gotta find what I do well, John.
Well, you need some sort of outlet, right?
Sure.
Kind of a mental outlet, right? So poker, chess, checkers, crossword puzzles. I don't know, whatever people do to occupy their time.
I used to play chess a lot, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I not so much anymore. I mean, not that I was like, I'm done with this game. No, I just, sometimes you just stop playing things, and there's certainly a lot of options, online. Go play. I think back in the day I used to play Yahoo Pool. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
You ever play that? That was
Yep.
that was fun. You know what? I wonder if that's still around. You know what, folks? Show's over. I'm gonna go play Yahoo Pool. Sorry, that's it. No, I'm gonna do that after. I'll do that in about 25 minutes or so. I'll at least check it out to see if it still exists, because I really don't know. Internet Explorer went away, so you never know what's gonna happen. But yeah, no, I look. It was a fun experience. 4,600 people when I got kicked out at this event had registered. And I think registration was probably was going to end about an hour or so after I got booted or whatever. So I don't know what the final participants were, but close to 5,000 people were in this particular tournament. I mean, it was a lower, relative to some of the other events, it was a lower stakes tournament. So you can imagine that a lot of people like me, first timer, trying to, get a feel for it. It was a good event, 2 days. But it was fun. The environment was fun. Obviously, I got to see just how big the hall was where they were doing all these events, and getting to kind of meet people throughout the few days that I was there that had played in various different events was fun. Because don't worry, John, I may have lost that tournament, but I actually did okay for myself, going and just playing regular card tables that I like to play. So all in all, it was a good, successful trip, and I was productive work-wise. So I can't complain. Now I'm home, and I'm recovering. So I'm happy to be here, though. Happy to be here.
We're happy to have you back.
Good. And I just realized, folks, if you're looking on the screen, it says June 23rd. It is, in fact, not June 23rd. It is June 24th. So, again, I told you my mental clock inside is a little screwy right now. So, anyways, a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, yesterday, John, was the NBA draft. I'm pretty sure you were paying somewhat attention to that. I was eye on it as from a distance in the airport and all that stuff on Twitter. But most importantly, the Stanley Cup final is getting close to being over. Now, the last time we talked was actually before 6 of the NBA finals, and unfortunately, as you know, the Celtics did not win, and they lost that game in a very we'll talk briefly, because again, this game is now in terms of the sports world in the very distant past. The Celtics obviously very disappointing end to the season, but I think the over the top reaction of gloom and doom was way overdone by some people, because the reality of it is this is a team that was 2 wins away from winning an NBA title against the equivalent, so to speak, to what we saw from the Patriots from 2014 to 2018. A team that was dominant at times, but towards the end was, that this is not the Golden State Warriors team of 5 years ago. But, again, we saw every quality of a champion come out in their play down the stretch in that series. And I think that's what we saw with the Patriots, certainly in 2018, to kind of cap off their run. Not saying that Golden State's run is capped, not at all, but there are a lot of comparisons you can draw between the two. But the reality of it is, I mean, people sitting there saying, oh, Jason Tatum's never going to do this, he's never going to do that. He was awful. Well, let's take a step back a little bit. Did he have moments where obviously he did not play well? Sure. The turnovers, yeah, there were some really bad ones. But the reality of it is, John, the kid scored the most points for anyone his age in the playoffs, most assists than anyone at his age in the playoffs. And you talk about comparisons. I mean, Steph Curry was 27 years old when he finally won his first NBA title. Jason Tatum's 24. Go to LeBron James, same thing. Michael Jordan, same thing. So not to say that he's going to be those guys. I think, again, the need to react in the moment kind of really screws with people's judgment, because they say these ridiculous things like, oh, that's it. That's never going to happen. He's not this guy. He's not him. That's the new thing, right, John? Is he him? Is he not him? What the hell are you talking about? Yes, of course he is. Have you not seen him play? Did we not forget 46 points against the Milwaukee Bucks in a closeout or an elimination game 6? So, yeah, obviously disappointing end for the young team, but certainly encouraging for the future.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we'll see what they do with the roster in the offseason, whether they try to add another piece or they tweak it or whatever else they're going to try to do to cover up some of the shortcomings. Tatum didn't have a really good series. We understand that. But again, as you said, he's 24 years old. Sometimes the growth is not linear. So we'll see what happens next year. Again, the Eastern Conference is very, very difficult right now. But we also have to see what happens in Brooklyn. If, Kyrie and Kevin Durant are gone from there, they'll go into a rebuild. But you still have Milwaukee and Miami probably as the 2 top contenders with the Celtics going forward, unless, Philadelphia figures it out. So, yeah, they'll be right there again next year. And, getting back to the finals isn't easy. I mean, LeBron made it look easy going there 9 out of 10 years, and Steph Curry's made it look easy going there 6 out of 8. That's abnormal. But I think the Celtics' future is very bright, and see what they can add in the offseason to try to get over the top.
Yeah, and look, I mean, no one, of course, you can't assume that. And I think that's, unfortunately, especially when it comes to like Celtics fans, certainly the ones that are maybe in their 20s that, look, if the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl, yes, that could be seen as a bit of a failure because obviously their standard was so high. And, the fact that, Tom Brady went to a Super Bowl, has gone to a Super Bowl in more than half the seasons that he's been a starter. Yes, the expectation is you go to the Super Bowl and more often than not win. you can't expect the same standard with this team that we've seen growth from year to year. I mean, they've had early AFC Eastern Conference Finals appearances that obviously didn't result in going to the finals, but this time they took the next step. And look, you got to figure that, it doesn't mean that they're going to win next season, but to your point, like just a little bit more growth across the board. I don't know. I know this is the thing going around, a quote unquote true point guard. I think people are kind of mocking it, rightfully so, because everyone's becoming a Twitter GM in the offseason saying exactly what the Celtics need to do. But to your point, I think tweak is more the appropriate term, not necessarily an overhaul. People are talking about trading this guy and that guy. Oh, what can you get for Marcus Smart? Well, what you get is a lesser defensive team if you trade Marcus Smart. I mean, again, frustrating, and we've, back and forth expressed, at times kind of a comical frustration with Marcus Smart. Like sometimes you cringe when he's making a pass, but half the time it doesn't work. The other half, he's making a great pass, making a great play, but more often than not, he's making a great defensive play. So trading Marcus Smart is not the right move. Trading Jaylen Brown is not the right move. Getting rid of Daniel Tice, that might be the right move, but I don't know who you're going to get or what you're going to get for him. We heard yesterday, Brad Stevens say, they may or may not be able to use the $17 million trade exception. It may expire. So we'll see what happens, how they, go forward. I do think that they need a little bit more consistent depth, scoring, at least. The very disappointing thing about, those last few games was the absolute disappearance of Derek White. I think that really hurt them because, certainly in the Bucks series and game one, especially, he came up with some big timely shots, especially from three, that just weren't falling. And you saw that early in game six where there was a few shucks and it looked like me out there shooting. Like everything looked good until I actually released the ball. And it was like, ooh, that's not going in unless it's a lucky bounce. So,
that's what you get with Derek White. He's one of the most inconsistent players, really, over the last half a dozen years. He made the playoffs in 2019 with San Antonio, and in one series, he had a 4-point game and a 36-point game. Like that's a rarity. You would like him to be more consistent than that, but he's not. So, yeah, I think what they really need, as much as anything else, is some scoring off the bench, like a knockdown shooter, a JJ Redick, Kyle Korver type, who's going to hit 40% from three, who, if Tatum's on the bench or if Brown's struggling or vice versa, that they have someone who can get them a bucket so they don't get scored upon 21-0 over a 5-minute stretch in the finals. Someone who can go get a bucket, whether it is as a shooter or as a creator. I think that's one need they do have to fill.
Yeah, no, I agree because, like, when Derek White's your primary guy off the bench, for scoring, that's not a good thing. But if he's complimentary, that's different. Because to your point, the streak, and you talked about this before that game and throughout the playoffs, the streakiness of Derek White. And I'm not saying, again, this isn't get rid of him. No, it's just you got to understand his limitations, that you got to expect at some point he's not going to be as hot as he was. And as much as he was rolling early on, it was almost inevitable. It's just unfortunate that it occurred when it did. So you had a little bit more depth, obviously a little bit more scoring off the bench. And I think you're in a pretty good spot because, again, I'm not, everyone's, they need this true point guard. Well, I'm like, again, if you do that, then you're sacrificing defense. And this team, as great as it is offensively, the foundation of this team is its defense. Correct? Do you agree with that? I mean,
oh yeah. I mean that was. I thought their defense was even pretty good against Golden State.
Oh,
I mean,
it was.
Golden State was consistent throughout the finals. I mean, Golden State was so consistent in the finals. It was like 108, 107.
Yeah.
It was just. I equate Golden State in the 6-game series to a student that took 6 classes. Got 2 A minuses, 3 B pluses, and a B. Whereas the Celtics offense in the finals, you had an A, an A minus, 2 C minuses, a D, an F. Yeah, I mean, it was just wildly inconsistent. It was more about the Celtics' inconsistent offense than anything. I thought their defense was okay. I mean, Curry was amazing, but, they never went off and got 120 points. It was actually the Celtics who scored 120 in game 1, 116 in game 3, and then after that, kind of shut down.
Well, and and that kind of goes back to the root of the Celtics issue. And again, this isn't taking anything away from Golden State. I mean, I think we all agree that. I mean, they put on a, obviously Curry especially was great, but the Celtics, it just a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and it came from turnovers. I mean, how many times did we see 16 or more turnovers? This team is winless essentially. And what in Game 6 you pretty much hit that mark halfway through the second quarter, so you kind of knew what it was going to be. And look, remarkably enough, they almost actually kind of worked their way back into that game, and unfortunately, again, it just didn't. It's disappointing, and I understand reactions in the moment, like as soon as the series is over, as soon as the game was over, like it's disappointing. Oh, sure, absolutely, but at the same time, like you have to understand that. I look, where I'm at, John, with the 76ers, and you mentioned them as one of the potential teams, and I think you're very hesitant to do that, but I want to point out I got them in the Houston Texans category for me, and
good point.
To me, it's I've heard for not just the last few. I mean, I've heard since Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett got traded to Brooklyn that. I'm sorry. That's who I was talking about, not 76ers. I mean, it's so actually, you know what? Kind of both. I'm gonna say for both of those teams, really. Brooklyn, everything's about, I think that's imploding right now. I think Celtics and Cavaliers fans are, they're basically that Simpsons meme where Homer turns and pats the couch to Lisa and says, "Come sit down." Like, hey, come join us. We told you. I mean, Celtics fans experienced the same thing. Cavaliers fans were like, "We're telling you, we're warning you," and I'll admit, myself included, a little bit blinded because of the exciting someone like Kyrie, and a little bit of a sports hatred for LeBron James because you wanted to believe, LeBron was the problem. LeBron was the problem. Well, no, I think it's very clear at this point who the problem is. So when I look at Brooklyn, I'm like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. So yes, that does still apply, but in the midst of me screwing up and saying the wrong team and talking about another, it does actually apply with the 76ers, because for how long have we heard about the process? Oh, trust the process. This is the process. Well, the process is part of it's in Brooklyn. The other part is great, but it's always, is he going to stay healthy? Who knows? So to me, I'll believe it when I see it with the 76ers. I'll believe it when I see it with the Brooklyn Nets. So right now, I'm with you. I think the Bucks and the Celtics are clearly the two teams in the East. I think the Heat are a wild card, but Jimmy Butler's going to be 34, and I think we saw the absolute extent of what they can do as they're presently constituted in this Eastern Conference Final. And look, it was almost good enough to go to the NBA Finals, but I think you and I would agree that this isn't the Heat and the Celtics aren't in the same situation, if that makes sense. Like we see the Celtics as an ascending team. We probably see the Heat as a team that's kind of just clinging on to great coaching and some really good talent. But again, Jimmy Butler's going to be 34. So
yeah, and Kyle Lowry's even older.
Yeah,
and breaking down at an alarming rate. And it's a great point about Philadelphia and Brooklyn being kind of like the Houston Texans. Neither team has made it to even the conference finals.
Yeah.
I mean, the deepest Brooklyn went with Durant and Kyrie Irving and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett was the second round of the playoffs. And the farthest that Philadelphia went after this process came about with, Simmons, Embiid, et cetera, was again the second round of the playoffs. They were the conference finals. At least Miami.
Don't forget Markelle Fultz.
Markelle Fultz was the first overall pick. I mean, just think about what Philadelphia or even the Lakers could have done if they just drafted better. Because the Lakers had the second pick the 2 years that the Celtics ended up with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum with the third picks. The Lakers could have had Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Now, they probably would have flipped those two guys for Anthony Davis, and New Orleans would be in really good shape right now. But, I mean, the intricacies of those drafts are very, very fascinating.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that to revisit, especially that Jason Tatum draft, how well Danny Ainge is a distant memory, it seems like now when it comes to the Celtics building this franchise right now, obviously with Brad Stevens at the helm. But What a incredible top of the draft he had to essentially trade back, knowing that these other two teams were going to essentially take the second, not best player in the draft. I think Jason Tatum,
right.
The best player, is certainly in that first round. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm fairly confident to say, and maybe you can correct me.
He's the best player.
Clearly.
By player, because it was Markelle Fultz, followed by Brandon, followed by Lonzo Ball.
Yeah. I was going to say that was Lonzo Ball.
He's the best player in that draft by far. You can make a case Jaylen Brown's the best player in the previous year's draft. I mean, it could be him or Pascal Siakam would probably be the debate there.
Well, look,
Jamal Murray too.
If had the Celtics actually been able to win that NBA title, he was right up there at the top of the NBA, the MVP race, and from the Celtics perspective, because I think Jaylen Brown, had a better overall final than Tatum. And look, they both had their issues. I mean, I didn't want to see Jaylen Brown handling the ball. That's something that, we don't want to see. And I think that's maybe where some of that need for a quote unquote true point guard, and I say that kind of facetiously, but that true point guard comes in, because you sit there and you watch Jaylen Brown try to dribble, and you're like, let's less of that and more of those dagger threes and great drives to the basket, and not handing the ball, handling the ball. Same with Jason Tatum. Like you want Jason Tatum being able to move around freely, not necessarily handling the ball all the time. And I think that's something, yes, I think they need to figure out, would it help if they had a pure facilitator? Absolutely. And again, you get some of that with Marcus Smart, but his value obviously is defense. So if you're going to replace him, you're going to take a step back defensively. So what's got to get, something's got to give, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's only so much that you can bring in talent-wise. And also, I think it's the way their offense is run, too. The problem I've had with their offense is, especially down the stretch, and again, you're playing better defenses. Milwaukee, Miami, and Golden State are all top 5 defenses in terms of production. So you're facing better teams. But also, it just never seemed like you could get easy shots for Tatum or Brown. Like, they really had to work to get their shots. They had to create their own shots, or they had to, break through, crack down and break down a defense. So it was never easy. You'd like to see them get some easy buckets, which they just never were able to get.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that's the thing. You got to figure that opportunities are going to come again. Not necessarily, again, nothing's guaranteed to get to the final, but you like where this team's going. This isn't a Celtics team with Paul Pierce and Garnett that only had a small window. This is a team that, tomorrow could make a move that all of a sudden you're sitting there saying, wow, this team may be the best team in the East. I mean, that's how close that they are. I mean, they were 2 wins away from the 18th NBA championship. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, this offseason and obviously into the season. NBA draft, any stick out to you? I mean, you follow it a lot more than I do. I didn't get to actually see it. I was traveling home yesterday, but anything in particular, Celtics wise and league wise, that stuck out to you? Best pick, worst pick?
No one knew what was going to happen at the top of the draft till it actually happened. I mean, Jabari Smith was supposed to be the first pick, and then he ended up being the 3rd pick. You felt pretty comfortable, that the 2nd pick was going to be, the big guy from Gonzaga, Chet Holmgren, and then Paolo Banchero, who, I like because he's a fellow Italian-American. So, I'm pleased with that.
You're biased.
He was
you're
the first
biased.
overall pick. I am. He holds dual citizenship. I don't hold dual citizenship. I barely have an American citizenship if they still want me in the country. But, that was kind of weird. But I think the last few drafts in both sports have been weird, Ian. I think COVID's had some effect on this because who's playing, who's scouting, who's, it's just been, it's been kind of weird. And this is like the 2nd or 3rd straight NBA draft that you're like, there's no, Tim Duncan type player isn't coming out, or a LeBron James player isn't coming out. They're good, but they're not great players. So we'll have to see what happens. But the top 3 picks, no one knew pretty much until, the commissioner got up and made the announcement. Of course, Woj is always ahead of everybody. I think
I was going to say, except for Woj, apparently. But well, they shut down. I mean, even again, betting sites, they were shutting down those bad because
Right.
there was nothing, there was no indication one way or the other. So clearly, I mean, it's not the spectacle that the NFL draft was. I mean, you're talking about getting the entire thing done in just a few hours, whereas the NFL takes like 3 days and stretches
Right.
out every second of it. So yeah, it'll be, like I said, it'll be interesting to see. And of course, obviously the NBA season's over. But before we get going, I do want to bring up the Stanley Cup because the Tampa Bay Lightning are on the brink of finally losing a playoff series because they fell down 3-1 after losing in overtime to the Colorado Avalanche, who it's incredible to think about that. One of my, non-Boston sports favorite memories was watching Ray Bourque win the Stanley Cup. And, obviously being a longtime Bruin, all that. And, the famous line from Gary Thorne when they were doing the Cup after 22 years. Well, it's been 21 years since that. So essentially, an entire Ray Bourque career since he actually won the cup, which to me was kind of hard to wrap my mind around because 2001, you remember, you think about, wow, okay, yeah, actually that makes sense. You go back, you remember seeing his kid crying on the ice, and in the last 21 years, we've seen him have a cup of coffee in the NHL, some with the Bruins and all that stuff, and yeah. So, anyways, it was incredible to think about how long ago that was. Now you got Joe Sakic up, in the the front office with Colorado. You have Colorado on the verge of winning the cup for the first time since that moment, and that's another surprising thing to me. Obviously, I knew that, but this is a team that, when they were formed, when they moved from Quebec and became the Colorado Avalanche, originally, the New Jersey Devils used to be the Colorado Rockies. A little fun fact for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. Actually, you might know that. You've been around. You've been
I'm
around the
old.
block
I'm
a
old.
few years.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, this is a team that in their first 6 seasons of existence won 2 Stanley Cups, one in '96 and one in obviously 2001, both with Patrick Roy as goalie and some of the best players of that generation, Sakic included. But it was pretty surprising to think that this is a team that hadn't been to that level since, and now they're on the verge. Now, I'm not saying it's over. Of all the leagues that we've seen comebacks happen, the NHL seems to have more of the bigger ones, 3-1, 3-0, that type of thing. So it's certainly possible, and I certainly wouldn't discount Lightning, but I do think this series will end. I'm hoping it ends in 6 because then I'd win a little bit of money because of it. So, but either way, I do think it's going to be hard for the Lightning to win 3 straight games against this Colorado team. That's just, you talk about, the Celtics wanting to be deep in an NBA sense. I mean, this Colorado team is deep, and we saw one of their best players return and actually score their overtime winning goal to give them the 3-1 series lead. So I think it's going to end. It would be obviously nice for Avalanche fans for it to end in Game 5 in Colorado, but I do think this will come back to Tampa. But at the end of the day, Colorado's going to beat the man. The Ric Flair line. To beat a man, you got to beat the man. And
yeah, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, and again, there's always that possibility of a comeback because of the goaltender, right?
Sure.
Vasilevsky could just go nuts the next 3 games and become impenetrable. Although Colorado is, just like you said, is so deep and talented
they're
on a roll. They're both great teams. And look at how paper thin the difference has been. Each team's had a blowout win, and Colorado's won the 2 games in overtime. So you flip that, and it could be 3-1 Tampa. But it appears through 4 games that Colorado is the better team.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. Like, although the result may be close, like Game 1, I think was obviously, I think, dominated by Colorado, but they let Tampa get back. I think Colorado has been clearly the better team in this series. Like, I don't think it's as close as some of the games indicate, but to your point, though, that's the difference great goaltending can make. And I think Andrei Vasilevsky is still the best goalie among them and certainly the most capable of doing it. But, Colorado's relentless. And, when at one point, Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon combined for like 1 point through the first 4 games. and they, you know what I mean? That's your two of your best players being held off the score sheet. It's like that Celtics game 5, watching Steph Curry, have a bad game and you don't take advantage of that. That's that's a disappointing thing for obviously the team that loses. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I believe like I said, I think it's going to go to game 6, but I think ultimately Colorado will be lifting the cup, and that will be the conclusion of our 2 winter sports, and it will just be baseball, John. Just baseball.
Oh boy.
Until football comes in about 6 weeks. So, all right, everyone.
Exciting.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, our one and only episode of the week. But we will be back in full force next week and really get back into the rhythm of things, because I will be around. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, at Full Press Radio. And, of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com and fullpresshockey.com. Have a great day, folks. And